is May 27th, 2003. This is the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress of the United States in partnership with the Historical Society of Leisure World, Laguna Woods, California. This interview is taking place and being taped in the video lab of Leisure World, Laguna Woods, California. Edwin Wanner, who was born November 16, 1921, is being interviewed by me, Sheila Lichtenstein, of Leisure World, California. Good afternoon, Ed. Thank you very much for joining us with the Veterans History Project. I'd like to get some information from you about your time before going into service. Tell us a little about your background, please.
I was born in Columbus, Ohio, an only child, spoiled probably. I attended University High School, which is a part of Ohio State University. And after I graduated from there, I went to TMI, Tennessee Military Institute, where they have ROTC. So I'm sure I profited from that experience, being away from home, out of the nest, and learning a little bit about crawling through the mud and sand and so forth to train in case I was going to be in the infantry. So it happened so that I went from TMI to Ohio University, and I took ROTC there again. So I had 2 years of ROTC. And after that, to Ohio University, I went to Ohio State University, and at that time I volunteered for the aviation cadet program. So that sort of brings us up to date. I always have liked airplanes, toys. Even when I was 5 or 6 years old, I thought this was just great fun, making paper airplanes and so forth.
Did you ever fly an airplane prior to going into the Air Force?
Just for a few minutes. I had a friend that was trying to get a commercial license. So he said, would you like to take the cross country? I said, sure. This is in a little plane called a Piper Cub. Mm-hmm. And the whole side of the airplane opens up and you put your foot out on the wheel if you want to, which I did. And I had a high school girlfriend that lived in Painesville, right along Lake Erie. So I was going to be a real show-off and fly up there, or have my buddy fly me up to Painesville Airport and land, and then she'd come out and she could touch the airplane and she wanted. Well, as it happened, she didn't show up. And I was so horrified that she didn't want to at least come out to see the plane, if not me. So that was sort of a dull start so far as flying. But anyhow, I always have liked it.
Now, before you left, were you married or?
No, I was single. Went from Columbus to San Antonio, and I had some family members come down to see me off, and some friends and so forth. One of my buddies said to me, "Wonder what makes you think you'll ever learn to fly?" And I was horrified. My pal was saying this to me. But then I thought, he's probably right, because I had a terrible record of motion sickness, swing, merry-go-round, you name it, I've been that kind of sick. So I thought, well, I'm going to start out anyhow, even if I don't complete. So as it turned out, I did finally get over the air sickness.
Did you have any trouble getting into the academy?
No, because I'd already taken the battery test. Yeah, I had lots of those. And so anyhow, when I went to San Antonio, I rode down on the train, and it was winter, and I got a terrific cold. So when I got there and went through a line, and they handed me blankets and uniforms and so forth, shoes and everything, when I had to sign the book, I signed my name, Edwin Wanner. I don't have a middle name. I just have the initial. Well, they didn't go for that.
Not acceptable.
Nope. And you have to write an I-O, initial only. Well, nobody ever told me that. I didn't know anything about the Army. So they had me punished by marching up and down by the flagpole for
You're
about.
saying the wrong thing?
Oh, for signing the book
Oh,
wrong, yeah.
right.
So that was sort of a disappointing start, but at least I've been conditioned a little bit by TMI and being in ROTC.
How did you find training? Tell me about the training part.
Well, I was sort of soft and flabby at that point because I hadn't had exercise. And I paid the price for that. I went out one time and I see these guys running and they get to a track and they get on the track and they disappear into the woods. And I thought, I don't know what they're doing, but if I'm going to have to do that, I got to go practice. So the next afternoon when I had some time off, I went out to that track and I went walking around there about a third of the way and I was exhausted. I never be able to do this. So when you're young though, you can adapt pretty quickly. After about 4 or 5 days of attempting this jogging exercise, I got so I could make it all play. So anyhow, we went out one day, the whole squadron of cadets, and some of them took off around there, and I was following, and they had told me, I said, hey, there's a shortcut. I thought, oh boy, that's for me. I don't want to be exhausted all the time. So when I got close to the shortcut, I knew there was some people behind me, some cadets. I thought, I don't know who they are. It could be instructors or something. So I don't know. I chickened out at the last minute. I didn't make that turn off. When I'd gone a little further and came to the end, or before I came to the end, there was an instructor and he handed out bottle caps. That was the evidence that he made the whole circuit. So I saved myself a lot of trees by not fudging on that.
And those that fudge didn't get the caps.
Oh, no, that's right.
How long was basic training?
Basic training, probably about 6 months. And it was very, very, I was in good shape by that time. But I flew 3 different airplanes. The first one was a airplane with an open cockpit. Looked like a bluebell, goggles, scarf, and a whole thing. So that was a beautiful airplane.
Was that in the States, though?
Yeah. That was in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And that was where I was wishing that I could just perish and go away because I was there so many times I went out to the clinics.
And they didn't have medication for it, did they?
No.
Oh, dear.
So anyhow, it just sort of gradually went away. And then I went from Pine Bluff to Coffeyville, Kansas. And that was a bigger airplane. It was about 400 horsepower compared to 150.
You don't get as airsick in the bigger ones, do you?
Well, you do, sure. You can do rough stuff in it, though. You do acrobatics, you can get 50 sick. In fact, jets are even worse.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Well, you get so much resource. But anyhow, I made it to basics pretty well, with a few disasters, I suppose. My instructor, one of them didn't care much my personality or something. And so he would take the stick and bang it back and forth if I made mistakes. I'd come home or come down with black and blue legs. So anyhow, so I lived through him.
And that was still in Coffee?
Yes, yeah. Then I went to the house in Oklahoma for advanced study. And that was a twin engine. And we didn't do acrobatics. So that went smoothly. I thought, I'm going to make it. And I did. Got my wing, got my second lieutenant bar. And they sent me to Fort Worth. And before I ever got there, oh no, I got to Fort Worth all right and started flying the B-24. And that was transition school. So I was pretty excited about that. But when I looked at the cockpit, I thought, they're kidding. I'll never, ever learn all of this. All the big buttons and switches and everything's wrong.
Describe what that looked like when you walk into a cockpit and you see all of that.
Well, it's hopeless. You look up, there's a whole bank of things and special radios, and over here's another one, and in front of the co-pilot are more, just on and on. So that's pretty spooky. So to learn a little bit about it, what we did was go out and put on a blindfold. We'd have a buddy with us, not flying, just putting on the ground. And we'd have to reach out and touch whatever the instructor wanted us to touch, like the gear lever and the radio control, and whatever it was. So we learned it so that we were flying at night.
I don't see.
Flying stuff, right? So let's see, we left Fort Worth, headed to Salt Lake to pick up my crew. Unfortunately, my father had a very serious illness, and so they gave me an emergency leave, so I went home for, I think, 4 or 5 days. And unfortunately, I lost track of all of my buddies that I'd been trained with all that time. So by that time, I was kind of used to meeting new people.
Was your dad all right?
Well, he had a massive stroke, so he didn't recover from that. But anyhow, when I finished up at Fort Worth and was on the way to Salt Lake, when I had visited home, then I went back to Salt Lake and picked up my crew.
Was that the original crew? Or was that
Yeah,
the original?
that stayed with me pretty much, although some were removed for reasons I won't bother with now. That was, let's see, that was, I can't think what year that was.
No, that's okay.
But anyhow, we went to Colorado Springs. And that's where the Air Academy is right
Yeah.
now. But we went there and did practice or combat things. So we go out and practice dropping sandbombs and machine gunning targets on the ground. We fly by and then the gunners can practice not coming out and done. So that gets us through combat things. And we went to New York on a train. Naturally, the Air Force never gets to fly any place. So we got there on the train and they issued the mosquito netting. I thought, oh, thanks heavens, because I need cold weather. I thought, this is going to be tropical, that's all, that's for me. When the ship pulled out, turns out it was the Queen Elizabeth going to England. So I guess so they just sort of conned us all so we wouldn't tell the enemy, I guess, where we were going. So okay, off to England.
Let me interrupt you a minute. Now, what part of the war was that? Were we in war yet?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. There were submarines around, but the Queen Elizabeth was pretty fast, and they could outrun submarines unless they could fly.
Now, did you join before the war or after the war?
It was 1943, so it was after.
Okay.
Pearl Harbor happened while I was at Ohio University.
Oh, okay. Go back. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah. So you're on the sea.
Yeah, we went to England, or first to Ireland, and then they shipped us out to my base that I ended up with, which is the 445th Bomb Group. It's near a little town called Chillingham. So we did some practice flying there and adjusted our crew a little bit for someone suitable. And when we ripened, you might say, then they sent us on our first mission. And just was saying I was nervous. And when I was flying, I think it was Luxembourg or Wiltshire, I believe. And I looked up ahead, and my co-pilot and I were seeing all these little black spots up in the sky. I thought, that's incredible. We can't possibly fly through that black and come out the other side. It's just dense with those explosions. Did, but at that moment I thought we'll never make it. So you get more and more used to being under fire.
How do you communicate with your co-pilot when you're both feeling that way? Do you both sit and shake or what?
No, I don't really ever recall feeling like I was afraid. Not until later, after my mission was finished, I thought, that hadn't happened I don't think I was, I always thought it was gonna happen to somebody else.
Is that a common thinking?
I think so.
It's survival, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
So we never acted like we were afraid. We must have been, or at least we were tense.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed one symptom. I would have trouble swallowing my breakfast before the mission. And I just didn't want to go down sometimes. I finally got it to go down by drinking some coffee or something. But I don't ever think I trembled or thought I'm not going to go on this mission or anything like that.
And there's something else I want to know. How do you rate your crew? You work very closely
yes.
with them.
Oh, yes.
How do you feel about your crew and develop relationships and
Well,
testing them?
see, I was lucky. Well, first of all, I started out with a co-pilot that didn't want to be a co-pilot. He wanted to be the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been an instructor in DC-13 for the single engine plane. And so he was going to make my life miserable and hope that I'd transfer him off, which I did. Because one day we were taxiing out, and he reached down and pulled up the gear lever. Well, it's safety designed so you can't put the gear up when the way the plane is on the gear. Thank heaven. But I wasn't sure. I thought it might not work or something. It was dumbbell is lifting it. So that made me pretty mad. So I got him off the crew.
How do you do that?
Oh, I was the commander.
Yeah.
It's
So
like
you
the
did
captain of the ship.
Yeah, and you just say, you're gone.
Well, I didn't say that to him. I just went into operations. I said, this man is not suitable on my crew. I said, okay. So they took him off and gave him one that was tremendous. He was trained in B-17. So he never had an experience with 24s, but nevertheless, the two of us sort of meshed perfectly. And he was good at formation flight. He really tuck it in close. And I wasn't that good at it, but I was good at instrument, blind flight. So the two of us sort of taught each other. So we worked it out real well. The other crew members, the navigator, I couldn't say enough about him. He was just tremendous. My bombardier, we called him Dead-Eye Dick. Yeah. And he hit the pickle barrel almost every time. In practice flying. And my armor gunner, they were all top. I lucked out. Not that there weren't other good crews, but I don't think there were any better.
You've been at the same crew, or do you change all the time, with all your sorties?
Well, in bombers, yeah. There are times when you can't have somebody that's different, black or something, you have to replace somebody. One time, the only time that anybody got hurt, they put this, he was the captain, I was too at the time, but they put him on as my co-pilot because he needed to catch up with his crew. Somehow he had been sick or something and missed the mission, so he wanted to ride to Calgary, so he ended up with his crew. Well, as it happened, he was the only one who got hit. And he didn't get killed, but he was hit badly. Blew a big hole in the side of the cockpit. It must have been that big. He could have crawled through it. I would have wanted to, maybe. Anyhow, we thought we were going to go down. I think the plane stayed up. We covered one engine, so it stopped turning. So it was kept on fire. Anyhow, it was sort of such a coincidence. The only time I didn't fly with my own co-pilot, that happened.
That gives you cause for thinking, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure he did some thinking too. Because he didn't know, of course, what happened until we landed and he was out on the bicycle. He'd see us coming down the runway shooting red flares because the ambulance with us. So he didn't know who was injured. I had no idea. And then when he got close enough, then he could see the damage to the side of the plane. Because we always went, maybe there were fought missions that we didn't have full flat full.
How many missions did you actually fly?
Well, we flew 30, and we got a bonus. Most of the crews then were flying 35. But since we became a lead crew, they figured, well, that's a better target, so we'll let him off.
Lead crew means what?
Leading or being the leader of the squadron.
The whole squadron.
Well, it starts out I was a deputy, sort of like the assistant leader in case something happens to the lead. So then after we led the squadron, then we led the group. So we're talking about 35 or 6 men. So the squadron was about 10 or 12. And, on one occasion we came back, we wanted to land, and they wouldn't let us land because the weather was too bad. So they said, fly inward, find yourself an open field. Well, we kept going, and the gas is going down, and here I had either 10 or 12 planes. And I thought, oh, this would be horrible if we had to bail out all these people in these planes, over England. And I thought, no, we can't do that. So my co-pilot said, pointed out his side of the room, and he said, look, I see a runway down there. So I called on the radio for permission to land. And it was an RAF, a Royal Air Force field, and they said, no, we can't accept it. So I pretended like I didn't ever get it. And I called him again, knowing full well he was going to say no, and he naturally did say no. And so I gave the signal for a fuel off, so they all peeled away, landed. When the last ship was on the ground, it was so foggy we couldn't find the control tower where to go. And they sent a truck out, and the truck got lost. It was really so foggy.
Worse weather.
Oh, wicked stuff.
So you all landed in
yeah.
the RAF field, and what they say to you when you got down there?
Well, they didn't like it, but they had a good reason for not wanting it, because they didn't have bedding. They had to send people out in trucks to get mattresses. They didn't have enough food. They had to send some folks for that. It was sort of somebody dropping in unexpectedly, like they come to your house. It's not what you want to have happen.
Now explain something to me. If you're flying out and you can't land where you're supposed to, wouldn't they tell you where to land?
Well, they didn't know.
So they just wanted you to wander around?
Well, they didn't know we were that short of gas, probably, because we didn't have much left. I had more than most people because the lead plane doesn't keep changing propulsors all the time. It doesn't use gas quite as fast as my other 10 planes. So it was kind of stupid. I thought, sure, oh no, we can't be allowed. That would have been a parachutes coming down 100.
over
England, plus 10 planes going in.
Were you stationed all the time in England, or did they move you around?
All the time.
So you always flew out of England?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Sometimes it's been like maps. When you look up ahead, what planes, everything. Just picture 2,000 airplanes going on the same path, almost, not exactly the same, but sort of scattered. Just like a swarm of gnats. And then sometimes we missed it.
Yeah. And what did you see, but could you see below? What all did you see below?
Well, a lot of times we couldn't see the ground, and we used radar. But when we got it, about halfway through my mission, we got radar. And my ship was a radar ship. We called it PFF, Pathfinder. I forget what the other F stands for. But anyhow, it helped us find our target, but it wasn't as accurate as dropping with the bomb sight. But still, if you hit up the city, it's going to get up a lot of people.
Did you have photographers on board that took any pictures?
No, we didn't. Oh, there were in the Air Force, but they just didn't happen to be in my squad. And we had a camera that was in the bomb bay that took pictures of the bomb.
So then when you got back, you could see what you did?
Well, usually, unless it was just pure creamy cloud, you couldn't see anything.
Compare your first mission to your last mission.
Oh, my. Well, the first one scared me. I knew I was scared. I knew I was nervous, but I just thought, I'm going to do this. When the last one came along, I was sort of seasoned. It's just that we heard too many tales of somebody on their last mission and they get hit. So that was always sort of in the back of your mind. Anyhow, we came in and we had a little caravan, they called it, like a little portable house at the end of the runway with a guy in it with a biscuit gun, with a lamp. And you can change the color of it, get red or green or yellow or white. So they sometimes will signal the plane without using the radio if it's something wrong on the runway, like with a red lamp, and so then you pull up. Well, I was just almost on the ground and I see the red. So I pulled up and went around. This is my last mission. I want to get home.
Oh.
And it turns out it was only a reflection from the lamp that he aimed at a truck that was starting to cross the runway. And it reflected to me, and I thought, oops, I got to pull the trigger.
What about the rest of your plane?
Oh, they don't come in that close. They came in separately.
Oh, so they saw you take off. What happened?
Well, there's nothing. They just keep coming because the tower gave them permission to land.
But you just took off.
Yeah, well, I just went around the circle
Yeah.
and came back again. I think the Air Force needs to commit larceny because we stole coal and oil and gasoline to keep warm. We would wait till a foggy night came along and we'd crawl over the barbed wire into this pen that was like barbed wire as big as this room with coal, and they were using it for plugs and this and that, probably the higher brass. I don't know. So we thought that with that we're going to share it. So when it was foggy, a couple of us would crawl over and the others would pass us these, well, they call them parachute bags. I don't know how we said we did that. I didn't like that. But we just fill up those bags and hand them back to the crowd. And then they take them back to the hut where our little, like the coal bin.
Yeah.
The coal bin.
Bin.
Well, first they caught up with us on an inspection and nobody could figure out how that coal got here.
Now, you did that with the enlisted men?
No.
Oh, just the officers?
Those were yeah, we were all
But you weren't
separate.
together, yeah,
Right.
that's why I was thinking. But did the enlisted men get some warmth too?
Yes, they tried they had an improvement over ours. They used gasoline and oil. And it was marvelous. It was a barrel, like an oil barrel. And it would get so hot it would glow red. So what it just didn't melt down. But they started something like that. They got it going. And it was so good that then we had to go build one too.
So you had to learn from the enlisted men?
Oh, yeah. Well, usually the enlisted guys, especially like the engineers, that's their talent.
Do you think that you were trained well enough when you were in training for your missions and what went on? What were your...
Well, I don't know what I would have changed particularly. Naturally, things have changed so much now.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame. But no, they gave us survival training, which could have been very valuable. I memorized a bunch of telephone numbers in Switzerland.
Get you down to the parachute.
Yeah, if I could get over to Switzerland if they allowed. They helped us, we called it the escape and what.
Rescue?
Well, to avoid being captured. They had some terrifically clever ways of getting you a compass, because they had these silk maps and a pencil, a little clip on a little metal clip in your pocket, and if you could balance it on top of the pencil, it was quite nice. And we had some other clever devices.
Tell me about them.
Well, buttons. They had buttons that were bigger than shirt buttons, but they were metal. And so you could take one off and rip another one off, and you put one on top of the other, and it went north also. It had a little dot that would glow at night. So the little dot would tell you where north was. What else do we have? Well, we have another one which I won't go into because you don't want it on film. But it could be concealed pretty easily in a body cavity, let's say.
Oh, in a body yeah?
Oh, okay.
Okay, you don't want to tell me about that one, do you?
No, I won't tell you about that.
Okay.
Let's see, what else do we have? We had a regular little compass, like kids had. And that one, you were supposed to let you during its time. So
they wouldn't bother you with the other stuff,
That's
yeah.
right, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we had methamphetamine. Probably you're familiar with that. So that if you're trying, if you have to walk over the Pyrenees Mountains, the guys that are leading you over don't stop. You fall.
Yeah, they can.
So they had to keep going to stay ahead of the Germans, who they're usually following. There were a lot of techniques.
Did you know anyone that went through them?
Oh, yeah. You mean through the Pyrenees?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know them as a friend or anything, but they visited us and told us what experiences.
So the systems worked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had, they call them underground railroads. You know? And see, there were two guys from, well, I don't know where they were from, but anyhow, they had landed parachuted into Germany. And they got rid of their parachutes from their .45 pistol real quick, because if they catch you with that, you're probably dead. You know? So they got buried them someplace. And they had some German money in their ship, and they escaped them. And they bought tickets to try to get to the front, traveling for the infantry department, to get up close to it so they could get across to the Anglo-American lines. And let's see, I know. So they were on the train, and these German officers got on, I think these German officers, and they were both worried. And there was a lady sitting next to them. Oh, their seats run this way. You know, you get in from the side of the car, not the aisle. Anyhow,
What were they wearing?
They take that off and knock somebody over the head.
Oh, and get a German...
Oh, well, not a uniform.
But
just
civilian
clothes.
Okay, I didn't think they went on.
Oh, no. Well, anyhow, they had a newspaper which they couldn't read because they're pretending like they can read it. And the lady said something to them, and they used a profane German word or two, and she chose to ignore it, and they got away with it. The German officers were probably embarrassed by what these guys said. I don't know what they said, but we had language charts. So we could find the bad words and the good words. So we had all kinds of help to try to get us back on. Some guys came out through Spain. Some, I don't think they got out of Switzerland, but at least they were living real good. They went skiing and everything.
Tell me about debriefing. After you got out of a
off of a mission? Oh, well.
What was that like?
This is perfect. No, I didn't do much drinking in those days. And we would get a ration of whiskey. So everybody on the crew would get it, and some didn't like whiskey. So they donated to some other poor guy that did like it. So that was sort of nice. But the debriefing, that's where the intelligence officers really found out what was going on. For example, one time you see this contrails like smoke, the streets that are going almost up like this. Plane couldn't see that. Anyhow, what it was called the bat. It was a German rocket, actually a rocket engine, not an ordinary engine.
Where did they get?
Yeah, and it didn't last long. It just flew up to maybe 30,000 feet or something. Then it would be out of fuel, and they would try to either dive on somebody and machine gun them, or they would call back to their base and tell them what the altitude of the plane was, so they set their fuses from the anti-aircraft. So, all kinds of little things like that going on.
Where were you when the war ended?
in trouble.
Oh, you were home. So
Yeah.
after your 30 missions,
Yeah,
you
well,
had enough points to go home?
Yeah, oh yeah, I had
Mhm.
points. I came to Santa Ana.
Oh, wait a minute, just tell me about your medals. You got a couple of medals, I bet you.
Well, for every 5 missions, you got another air medal, air medal. And you can't have a whole bunch of air medals, so you can put a little
Stuff,
sleeve
yeah.
thing on there.
Mhm.
So for each, so you get one for each mission, each 5 missions. The DFC was partly
That's a distinguished flying cross.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
I don't know how to explain that except it's your general. Well, if you're leading,
Mhm.
you're leading, and you're more likely to get yourself shot because you're leading.
Mhm.
They take that into account. If something heroic happens, like somebody gets dragged out to put the fire out or something, you know, then you're very likely to get a DFC. So it's this thing is fun. And then in my case, I had a crew that was marvelous. Like four of us got it.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you keep in touch with any of the crew after you left?
All the time.
All the time?
Yeah. At least Christmas cards, and I visited them. I'm so proud I visited him. I used to like the bug. I don't know if you know what that means, but the illegal fly, real close to the ground. And I used to love to do that, so the poor guy would have to sit over there and tolerate me since I was the commander. So when I visited him in Texas, he really got even with me. He took me on a motorcycle ride. I wish I'd never gotten on it.
They paid you back, huh?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah?
But the bombardier, cool, under fire, with a hole blown in the side of the plane, one engine looking like it was going to be on fire. Navigator, same situation. He just kept doing his calculations.
How do you feel when someone in your crew gets, not in your crew, but in your group gets shot or lost or whatever? What does it do to you? What is your reaction?
Well, you have to sort of ignore it. You don't want to think about it.
You don't?
You try not to. I'm not saying you don't. I don't think a day goes by now that I don't think about something. But back then, a lot of us noticed that it was me. And it's sort of like somebody closes the door, you know. You want to think about it. So if it was somebody really close, that would be really hard to make. I have 2 buddies that were killed in the Battle of the Bulge. Oh no, one of them was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. And I felt terrible about that because I thought he was as safe as he could be with a medic. I thought he was in a hospital someplace. Didn't turn out that way. So here he was, maybe 500 miles away from where I was. He got killed, and I didn't hear about it, fortunately, until I got home. But another one, the same thing. He was a B-29 co-pilot, and it crashed one takeoff. So it suits you up. And that's part of the reason I left fundraisers because it wasn't the same anymore. My 2 closest buddies were gone. And I made some errors, I think. I couldn't bring myself to go talk to them. Because they were both lieutenants, and I should have stopped by and never had been so long.
A lot of people couldn't do that.
Well, in retrospect,
It's
it's just kind of frightening that you would not do something.
Why? That's a human reaction.
Well, I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I tried to find their grave monuments in France, in Belgium. And I just couldn't do it. Find that they had computers and they stayed
You couldn't find it.
huge number of crosses. Huge number of crosses.
What did you do when you got home? outside of slide release?
Well, I went to work for the company my dad had worked for, not, and knowing that it would be just temporary.
Did you go back to school or anything?
I did right
Uh-huh.
I did that for a little while and
On the,
saved a few dollars.
Did you go on the GI Bill?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, I never would have been able to otherwise, because my dad wasn't working anymore. And, didn't have it. So, maybe there was a way, but I never thought about it. So anyhow, after leaving the company, I went back to Ohio State, and I couldn't get the schedule I needed for the next year. So I moved around, and I went back to IU and asked them, and no, they couldn't work it. So I finally went to Kent State. Some unfortunate publicity later.
Right.
But that was a nice school. So anyhow, I went through there, got my degree, then I came to UCLA and took another year.
So you have your bachelor's and you have a master's too?
That was graduate.
And the master's is in what?
Oh, no, I don't have a master's, but I have all the credits.
Credits for
But I used it for something else.
What did you wind up doing eventually?
Well, I worked for a pharmaceutical company out of laboratories for about 10 years. And I got pretty bored with that, and I was thinking, I think I'm going to go back to flying. These airlines were hungry for pilots.
Really?
And I thought about it, and I thought, I don't know. And the one that my wife worked for, the airline, offered me a job. And the only catch is I had to buy a uniform, and I had to buy a green card, or a green card, not immigration.
Yeah, I know.
It's an instrument card, you know. And I'm thinking, we're talking a couple of $1,000, and way back then, that was a lot. So I passed it by, and my mother was a teacher, so I thought.
Interesting.
So I liked it. I loved it for a while. The last few years were a little tough, but outside of that, it was a pleasure.
And you said your wife was in the airline? What'd she do?
She's a hostess.
Really?
Yeah. For a little airline that was carrying mostly military personnel. So I knew the chief the chief pilot, I knew him. You know, I'd been to party with him. I had almost gone to work for an airline that was called Western Airline. I don't know if you remember that one. But
That's gone now.
Oh, yeah, it's gone. So it was the same thing then. I got myself trapped with too much money to get my ticket.
The investment, yeah.
Yeah. So I backed off, and I decided anyhow I wanted to get a degree. So I did work for Western.
Where did you stay? Did you go back east, or did you come out
I
here?
went just to Columbus to finish up with Kent State University.
Yeah.
Then I came out here, because I've been to Santa Ana on what you call it, rest and recreation.
R&R.
Yeah. And so I thought, oh, what am I doing in Columbus? I don't like cold weather. This is more like it.
Were you married then when you came out here?
No.
So you met your wife out here?
Yeah, I met her at the big apartment we were in. Had a bunch of fairly young people, and so we were always having parties and dances and all that. Dress up and that sort of thing.
And do you have any children?
Oh, yeah, I have two. One's an engineer, and one's a musician. And it's not the way you would usually expect it. It's the boy that's the musician, and he plays with the Nashville Symphony. And my crazy daughter, she's a chemical major, and has a master's in environmental engineering.
Oh, why'd you call her your crazy daughter?
Well, she is. No, she's a lot of fun. She's got 2 kids, and the other one has 1 boy. A family of boys.
Tell me, Ed, is there anything else you'd like to tell us that I didn't ask you about, or you didn't tell us? Am I leaving something out?
I don't know. I probably put too much in.
No, you didn't.
I don't know what other things I would have brought. Oh, I'll have to say about reserve.
Please do.
Okay. The reserve, well, first of all, the Air Force has been very important in my life. Very important. I can't forget it if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And so I stayed in the reserve, and I got to do some flying because it was paid for by somebody else, you know. So I got to fly a jet. I never thought I'd get to do that. Yeah, so I was doing 233 around, made by Lockheed, one engine, unfortunately. But anyhow, things went well. I flew the biggest airplanes I ever dreamed of, even bigger than the 24. That was a C-124. And you drive a school bus in the snout. You know. So I don't think I'd like to fly. I was sort of like sitting in the front porch. Flying. So we flew around over Big Bear and that's around. Oh, then I had a friend that was also in the reserve. He was a psychiatrist. And met him through a friend of my mom. Anyhow, so Bernie and I would sometimes hop in a plane and just fly around someplace.
While you were in the reserve?
Yeah, right.
Now, you went in as a lieutenant, as a
No,
cadet.
A cadet, right.
Then, when you left, you were a captain.
When I left active duty.
Yes.
Yeah, I was a captain. Right.
And then in reserve, you were what? When you left the reserve?
Lieutenant
Colonel. So you had a good rank.
Yeah, I chickened out on going one more notch because my kids were little, and I was working too hard because I was a training officer, and I taught all day, and by the time I'd get to the reserve meeting and lecture for an hour and a half, my exposure would be just about gone. And I thought, it's not worth it, you know. I wasn't sure how my superiors would like it if I had to take off for 2 weeks every so often. So I might do it.
But you didn't go back into service, and you
No.
never saw action after that, did you?
No. Oh, I volunteered for Korea, but then it ended just about then. So didn't go any further than that.
Well, Ed, this was a wonderful interview. I really enjoyed this very much. I want to thank you very much for being part of this. And it's important that we do this. So thank you again.
Thank you.